still do 7 NUFC Matters shows for free a week. But if you want to support the channel, there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast or video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications option. Hit the thanks button to buy a super sticker. You can do this on the live chat too. You can also join our Patreon page or buy us a coffee at the link in all of our video descriptions below. We are also looking for sponsors. If you want our latest advertising rates and how you can get involved, then email John at nufcmatters1892@gmail.com. Thanks for watching.
Critics attack. It feels like I've been talking to myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you. If I don't say the words, then maybe it's not true. And it feels alright when they come and say to you, you're the only thing that makes us all believe.
Good evening. Welcome along to NUFC Matters. It is the three Amigos. We started last week's show saying that it was a therapy session for you. I think we all need therapy after that week. DM me out. But it's welcome to George, to Stephen, to Mitch. Welcome to you in the chat. And John Askew has been at it again, sent us a nice email. And he's started off with the title of his email, Is There Any Hope? And I think it's a good read. I'm going to read it to you guys, and we'll start with this tonight. I'm amazed, to be honest, come September the 2nd, that we'll still have a football club. But what shape will we be in? Can you offer any hope? Is there a realistic chance that Isak will still be with us at the end of the window? It's not looking good. Some of the fan base are far too long in the tooth to swallow a load of guff about an injury, and that's why he hasn't travelled. Perhaps there are some fans naive to believe such stuff, and there's always a chance that I might have got it wrong. It wouldn't be the first time, believe me. I'm not someone generally prone to a meltdown, but I seem to be heading for a justifiable one in this case, and I hope against hope I am wrong. I've made it clear over the last year or two how much I appreciate and value the NUFC Matters platform. I won't explain why, because it would take too long, but I'll always be grateful that I stumbled across it at the same time as news of a possible takeover was coming through in April 2020. I knew this was our best solution for the club going forward, and we knew Saudis don't do second best, and NUFC Matters has been an essential part of my diet over the last 5 years. I'm sure I'm not the only one, and I'm really looking forward to everyone's take on the Singapore flight absentee. I'm not optimistic, and I hope I've got it wrong. We'll see. My view is certainly no more important than anyone else's. If I do seem to get a little carried away with things at times, I just love the tune, and after believing we would just remain a rudderless ship decade on decade, along came October the 7th, 21, and it's been a great ride ever since. But are things unraveling a little? If Eddie sent Isak home, was it really for the reason stated? We don't know what's happened since, and it's raised a few difficult questions for a lot of us. This whole subject is so important for the simple reason that Isak is a one-off, one of the best players in the world, great strikers, and great strikers aren't exactly 10 a penny, more like 1 in a million. And at the moment, he's one of us, but for how much longer? And if he does go, where exactly will that leave the project? I'm not exactly sure, but I'd be interested in other mags' views, especially the main players on this platform. Of course, if Isak was sold, it wouldn't be for buttons and we can use the proceeds to buy other players. But would that be guaranteed to move the squad forward? I've got serious doubts on that one. Isak's brilliant, a one-off. I just hope we can do all we can to keep him here. I've got total respect for Eddie, and he's undoubtedly the right man in charge of our football club, hopefully for the next few years at least. And when it comes to media interviews, he's clearly the natural performer that certain other prominent managers certainly aren't. And at the Far East presses, that'll happen in the next couple of weeks. We'll just have to take his comments with a pinch of salt if he engages in a process of pulling wool over the eyes. For example, there's every chance we'll be told that he didn't travel due to injury. Will anyone really believe that? I'll leave the question hanging. I just hope for a change. He'll be properly quizzed on the subject, but I'm not holding too much hope on that one. Perhaps he'll tell the truth and say it as it is, but perhaps we can't handle the truth. It's all just PR, isn't it? And just to be clear, I've got total respect for Eddie and understand he's got to be careful what he says publicly. That's just the way it seems to be. But I'm sure many fans would just appreciate the facts. And I know some of them are actually challenged mentally because of this sort of stuff. So better things are resolved quickly, one way or another, on many levels. I'm rambling a bit, so I'll start a conclusion. I really hope Isak stays, but I've now got serious doubts. The club will go on regardless, but many will have serious questions about where we're going and what our future is, and is it as bright as we thought it was going to be. Clearly, the above is nothing more than one person's view, and I'm grateful this platform offers the opportunity for the expression of opinion regardless of anything. I do go on a bit, and if eyes roll as a result, I get it. I certainly won't be offended. If you prefer me not to go on about things quite as much as I do, just let me know. But football can be an emotive subject for many of us, particularly in this part of the world, as you well know. And we've only won one domestic trophy in the last 70 years. Is there a centenary for something in 26, 27? Just contact Stu Penman. If nothing else, perhaps the above offers a little food for thought. Thanks again for all everyone does on screen and behind the scenes, and NUFC's future, in my view, can still be bright. Okay, thank you, John. I make no apologies for reading that whole thing out because it was a good email. And you can email as well if you've got your opinion, you want it read out on the show, nufcmatters1892@gmail.com. So that was the week that was, George. We've had the bonus of having you on a couple of times this week already. I've had Mitch on for his monthly Ask Mitch as well. How are you feeling now about the situation that's developed? No news, I guess, is good news as far as Isak's concerned. Still no official bid from anybody. The only news coming out today is that Newcastle have missed out on Trafford. Sky running the story that Newcastle got up to £31 million and add-ons, but he's opted to go to Manchester City, and it looks like Ortega will probably go in the opposite direction. So another transfer target that Newcastle had in their sights for well over 12 months has opted to go to another club, George. What are you feeling at the end of the week that was?
Well, I'm wearing black, aren't I?
Yes, well, that's a good point.
That's no accident. A word to John asked you, for God's sake, John, don't stop sending your emails. It's very important, particularly to us on the channel, that we get feedback to what's happening from and how people out there think about it. And you make some really valid points. So please don't stop. It's very important. We're in the situation we're in, and it's something we've talked about on here for the last year, if not longer. The word is communication. This whole shambles, because that's what it is now, is about communication. Who said what to who didn't do what to who didn't pass what on to who, and nobody in the middle accepting responsibility, and the whole thing just becoming a complete and utter shambles. It also brings into highlight for me the big problem of that we've got in modern day football. Complete and utter lack of integrity from top to bottom, whether it be on the field or off the field. It's a struggle to find anybody who you could trust to tell you that it was raining, even if it was peeing down on their forehead. It just is that bad. And Mr. Isak really epitomizes that to me. I, at the moment, frankly, if it's true that he initiated this business about looking at his contract and looking at other options and all the rest of it, then the minute he said that, he was dead for me. He could go, goodbye, thank you, we'll take our money and cash you in. Because that just, the timing couldn't be worse. And he would know that, his agent would know that, to put maximum pressure on the football club, maximum pressure on Eddie Howe, and maximum pressure on everybody else. So once he said that, if that is true, then he died that day for me. So I'll not miss him. And I don't wish the lad ill, but I've got to say, if he's in the shower tomorrow morning when he watches the soap go down the plug hole, if his private parts go with it, he's got my blessing. So Then there's did Mitchell say that he was going to review it, or did Mitchell not say he was going to review it? Whether he did or he didn't anybody, Eddie Alramaya, debrief Mitchell before he left on things like that, instead of leaving it hanging? Again, complete lack of communication and integrity as well. So it runs right through the thing for me. And having sat here, on and off for well over 70 years now, there's very little about Newcastle United that surprises me. And this doesn't surprise me. What surprises me is that we can sit here week after week for over a year saying, where's the communication? Who's telling who's what? Who's in charge of this? Who's in charge of that? And yet the people who are supposed to be doing it don't seem to have a blessed clue. So it really is I'm wearing black because I can't think of a worse week than this week since the takeover took place for lots of reasons. And Isak is just the icing on the cake. So listening to people saying about his injury, even Bruno got on what was it, Facebook this morning, saying he's got an injury and he's got to stay back and all this sort of thing. Well, even he's, there was little conviction in what he was saying, to be perfectly honest. But it's a sad day. I also listened very hard this morning to Alan Shearer saying that Eddie Howe's got to do a lot of work to keep Isak here, do all he can to keep him here. Frankly, if what's happened is as a result of something Isak started, I don't want Eddie Howe to talk to him. I just want Eddie Howe to put the for sale sign on and get the money, say goodbye. He's played a canny game. He learned the language, how he walk in, and all that sort of thing. It goes down lovely. He's about to find out if he's made this mistake, that the Geordie nation takes people under their wing and loves them and cossets them and treats them as gods. Well, he's about to find if he's made that mistake. The Geordie nation also treats its traitors very, very badly. Now, I'll be at the front of bar 69 if Steve Hasty let me down to the front, singing and everybody else. There's only one greedy bastard, and that's where I'm at.
Mitch, come to you, mate. What's your feelings on that week that was? I mean, we've had you on Wednesday. It was quite a calm show, I felt, on Wednesday, despite all the madness around us, and quite a chilled out show, actually. But it's frustrating.
Because we still didn't know exactly what the full picture was. We had our suspicions. But until the flight left without him, then it started to raise more questions about where we're at. Again, can't help but feel so much of this is self-inflicted. Yeah. And that's what irritates and irks me the most. We've been asking for a long time, what's the situation with the CEO? What's the situation with the director of football? The sacking of Mitchell on seemingly what feels increasingly was a whim at the end of the season because somebody got upset about something. One of those things might be that there was no engagement about a new contract, for example, for Isak. PIF have had our trust and they've had our faith in a project that we were sold. And the way it's gone so far this summer, I totally understand people asking the question, have they just abandoned it? Have they got bored? Because there is a decided lack of leadership within Newcastle United. And that's effectively what's put you in this position. I was told a while ago the Trafford situation was pretty much done, but we were trying to accept them to keep her in the opposite direction. And then the minute that we do that, It activates the City parity clause, and City are done. We might as well have just done this ages ago. Why have we fucked around with that, knowing what was on the horizon? It's just embarrassing. It's an embarrassing way to go on, that we're that unaware of what's going on around us and that unaware of the situation. As far as Isak himself goes, what a naive thing to do. The lose-lose situation for us is, as you've just heard from me dad, there's a section of the fan base who I think we would take a long time to win back over, were he to turn around and sign an improved contract and say, okay, I'm staying. And that's not an atmosphere you want or need within your club. And we have been put in a position by him, because let's be honest, he has down tools. And I remember how I felt about Johan Gabaye when he did the same, and he was wearing the captain armband at the time. But he's done it at a very peculiar time when he doesn't actually have the power. He's got 3 years left on his contract. Very naive of him and his agent to say, well, Amanda said I would be talking to her about a new contract. Well, that's somebody who's left. That's like kicking off because your new boss hasn't done what your previous boss has done. And feels like an excuse to find a fight. Penny for the thoughts of some of the poor players who've been put right in the firing line and landing in Singapore, asking questions about Alex Isak, who from the club's allowing, who from the club's standing in to do that, and they leave those players in that position exposed. There's another lack of leadership. It's wholesale embarrassing. And we've trusted this project and trusted you as owners and backed you as owners. And now somebody has to step up. And by God, whatever solution you have, the next 5 weeks better be a blockbuster. Because I genuinely don't see a way back for Alex Isak. And that's sad. We lose out of all of that. And I think it's going to take some significant work from the owners to get anything like a feel-good factor back into this club on the back of what's been the best season in many people's lifetimes. Absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And with regards to John's email, thank you for that, John. You know what? It's all about opinions, and everything in football and what generates stuff like this is about opinions, and the more opinions, the better. Sometimes you agree with opinions, sometimes you disagree, sometimes people will get criticised, and in my view, how people respond when they're criticised is very much as the measure of the individual. And I think that's very true. Some people make them really do expose themselves when they respond to criticism in negative ways, in certain ways. I'm not exempt from criticism. God, make me mouth go and get as much wrong as I get right. But it's all about opinions, and that's what we should be able to share honestly and openly on a platform like this. So keep the emails coming, everybody, not just John. It's your platform as much as anybody else's.
Yes, me too. John, keep them coming. Steve, your thoughts?
John, emails are great therapy. Putting something down on a bit of paper, and I'd recommend it to anyone, even if you don't send it anywhere. It really does help. You know, it's a way of just expanding and condensing your thoughts and getting your opinion down, and then reading it back and thinking, yep, I'm right. Oh, maybe I'm a little bit harsh, whatever. Recommend it for anyone. And you've probably noticed that in some of the articles that we've written over the years in the fanzines. That's why it's quite often we've written them, because at a particular time we've felt as though there was a topic that was getting under our skin, or that we needed to expose, or we needed to talk about. So it's great therapy. The main gist of your email, you were spot on so many things. Let's take Isak not travelling, and how that leaves Eddie Howe. I think when we heard last weekend that he hadn't gone to the Celtic game and Eddie had sent him home because he said his head wasn't in the right place. I think that's probably sort of Eddie caught in the maelstrom, not understanding, something that had just been landed on his plate. And I think as any manager, you would immediately fall down to the first thing, oh, there's been gossip, I just want him out of the way. Probably want him out of the way because he didn't want to distract from any of the other players. And I think quite often when you hear of these situations, that could possibly be why Isak's not on the plane. Eddie doesn't want him to distract from what is ostensibly an important trip, not just for Alexander Isak or not just for Eddie Howe, but for the squad, for a squad of players who have been away on holiday, been away on international duty, who are coming back, who have got a long, hard season ahead of them. And Eddie wants to spend time with them all. He wants them to be knuckling down. He wants them in the right frame of mind, and he doesn't want any distractions. He doesn't want players having to go to Alexander Isak and either confront them or discuss with them, or to ignore him or anything like that. So the best thing to do in that situation is for Alexander Isak not to travel. Now, why is he not travelling? We all know his head's been turned. But I suspect his head was turned by things that have happened over the last 9 to 12 months at the football club. Promises made, new contract offerings that were on the table or that were going to be on the table or that had been promised. We've just had probably the best season of our lives as supporters, but those players have had the best season of their lives as well, winning a cup and being lauded. And I think some of them will have expected, and certainly Alexander Isak having been told, we're going to talk about new contract and extended time contract, etc. And then he finds that no sooner has the season ended, in fact, less than 24 hours after the season had ended, the man who's supposed to be in charge of negotiating that and having the conversations with them about it decides to up sticks and leave for whatever reason. Whether he up sticks or whether somebody got the sticks and hit him over the head is neither here nor there, but he went. And that's left a void because from that moment onwards, as Eddie probably said in his press conference, I was on holiday when the Mitchell situation blew up. It was 48 hours after our last game. I'm already away, and then I suddenly find that there's all sorts going on. Mitchell's away, and we don't know what's happening. So if that was Eddie, how did Alexander Isak feel? Because he's there sitting there wondering, well, who am I going to talk to? We can then speculate about what happened after that, whether he was just ignored, whether his agents were ignored, whether there was nobody to speak to, or whether he got a signal at that particular point, which was, you'll just turn back, you'll do what you have to do, and at some point in time we'll hold that conversation. But I think somebody's nose has been put out the joint. And I think Isak is playing a bit of a power play. If it's not Isak, it's certainly his agents, because they're in the front seat, they're in the box seat with this one, because they also knew that other clubs were coming looking for him. There was whispers about Liverpool, there was whispers about various other clubs. Everybody wanted Arsenal. They were all over him like a rash at the very start. Then they started looking elsewhere because they obviously got the signal that if you want Isak, it's going to cost too much. But it didn't put off Liverpool. This time last week, we were praising Newcastle because it was a fantastic power play to drag Liverpool in, play the card, and then to them to go out and to get Ekitike on a ridiculous fee and on ridiculous salary, by the way, £375,000 a week, allegedly, if you believe what's being said in the Liverpool press. Meanwhile, Alexander Isak's going, hang on, what about me? I'm the player that they wanted. There's no bid come in, but I could have had £375,000 a week. So the next little whisper you get, it's not from the player because the player's never said a word, but from his people, is that the phrase that they use? From his people, we hear drip in certain newspapers that he wants 300 grand a week. Now that would blow Newcastle's transfer and salary levels out of the window, or so we're led to believe. But if they were talking about a new contract, he was going to certainly be on pushing towards £200,000 a week, I would imagine, bearing in mind what he's currently on. But if that came with another 2-3 years added onto the current contract, which had 3 years to play with, then that would have probably been a good deal for Newcastle, because they would have been exactly the same position as they were when he signed. 5-year deal. Look fantastic. The accountants would have to work their magic with amortization and such like. But that's what their job's for. Where does that money come from? Well, that money comes from the commercial deals that are the responsibility of Silverstone, as the marketing and commercial director of the football club. Who's responsible for making sure that the contracts are dotted and signed correctly, and that we can the pennies that are being brought in by the commercial team add up? Well, that's up to Mr. Kappa, who's the financial guy. So we're working through this. But Mitchell's the overall man in charge. He's the man who decides, and he's the man who's supposed to be with Eddie. And Eddie doesn't even know he's left until he's gone out the door. Eddie starts to have his phone ringing when he's on holiday. All of this is well versed and well written and well read over the last couple of months. But the Isak situation, I think, where we are now, it's given all sides a breathing space. If there are people out there that want Alexander Isak, they're going to have to stump up the money. Now, from my understanding, if we're dealing with Liverpool, what we have to look at is they've been spending the Coutinho money for nigh on 7.5 years now, according to Liverpool, because they've been so poor. But if you look at that Liverpool deal 7 years ago when they sold Coutinho, they got £146 million for him in total, including a few add-ons, possibly pushing up to 148. With inflation and with the football inflation, which is a damn sight higher than the inflation that's flying around in terms of what we deal with when we're buying our petrol and our gas going up and our electric, etc. I think that pushes Alexander Isak's value to somewhere up near 200 million. And if I was the chairman, that's where I'd be sitting. I'll be saying, okay, you want him, Liverpool, put your cards on the table. By the way, it's anything above 200 million. And that kills the whole thing dead. But we need to hear that sort of conversation from the chairman. The chairman's position, what is it? He's a very successful businessman. He has an awful lot on his plate, but what he has done is that he's put his faith in Darren Eales, Peter Silverstone, Kappa. He's certainly in Mitchell when he employed him, and I think personally he's been let down by them. I think massively let down, because I think that between them, the football board of Newcastle United have let the fans down, let the players down, because they haven't had any forward push or inertia. And all we've heard from them for 12 months now has been negativity. You know, everybody's got a price. You know, players, yes, we're going to leave. It's PSR is really bad for it. Meanwhile, here's another strip. Here's another strip. Here's another strip. By the way, we're putting the ticket prices up. By the way, we're increasing the price of the caterer. And by the way, we're making it more and more difficult for you as a season ticket holder. We're making more and more difficult for you in your ballot scheme. By the way, the membership scheme's gone up. It's all loaded on us as the fans, and I can't see them coming up with anything. Mitchell's suffered. Mitchell's gone. I would imagine the others are looking over their shoulder, because I think we will have a chairman who will be absolutely furious at what he's looking at and what he thinks he's building and what he thinks he's left to be built by people. And I think that in the business world, what he'll do is he'll not be looking at the players and not getting angry with Alexander Isak because he performed excellently last season. He'll not be looking at anyone else. purely be looking at his board of directors that he put in charge to run the football club on a day-to-day basis in his absence. And he oversees it, and he'll be shocked and horrified about what's gone on. And I think this is where he's going to earn his corn in the next couple of weeks, because we'll see whether or not he comes down like a ton of bricks on those people, because that's, to me, is where the blame lies. No question. We looked at, I'll give you another example, the Trafford deal. 12 months ago, we were told James Trafford was nailed on for Newcastle United. £30 million, nailed on. The deal was done. Then we were told we ended up being forced to take Vladidos from Nottingham Forest because of PSR, because of the situation, and the Trafford deal died a death. 12 months have passed since then. Not a single journalist in the Northeast from any of our Northeast newspapers or any of the nationals has come back and mentioned at any time that there was a clause in Trafford's contract linked to Manchester City. It said they had first refusal, and if somebody comes in, they can go £1 more and take them. Nobody mentioned it until yesterday. That's when all of a sudden we started hearing about it with any sort of gumption or with any balance behind it. And what do we find? Within 24 hours, he's signing for Man City, because it shocks me to think that the people running the football club thought that they could get someone on a bid that was less than the offer that they made last season, and were obviously aware that there was a sell-on clause or a clawback clause that would allow Man City, if they wanted them, to match him, and they still allowed this to carry on. And I just think it shows the ineptitude of the people who are running the football club. They are out of touch, out of their depth in terms of what goes on as a business, as a football business. And that's when the chairman will see the light and will come down like a ton of bricks on them. Alexander Isak, I think he's running out of options. I think we've already heard Chelsea are not interested. Manchester United, they've said they're not interested. They can't afford him, which, surprise, surprise. They're not interested because they're not in European football, so you wouldn't have touched them with a barge pole. Arsenal, they've gone for Gyökeres, and good luck to them. We'll watch them all fighting over penalties next season and who takes them. That's going to be fun to watch. That just really leaves Liverpool, and they've been pushed into boxed into a corner. And I think Isak's boxed himself into a corner slightly, because I think he might find when he has these conversations that there's nobody after him, or nobody willing to pay the money that Newcastle have got, and that's when it comes back and we go, yeah, well, there's 3 years left on your contract, mate. We'll just see you through. You know, if that's we'll hold you to your contract, and he'll have to get on with it, because he is running out of options. I think that, from my point of view, if he left and he went to a Premier League club, I would be horrified, disgusted, and deeply annoyed and upset. If he went abroad, and we got big money for him, I would just think that is a good little bit of business. You know, if he went to Bayern Munich, for example, or PSG, or let's face it, the only other two clubs he could go to, which would be Real Madrid and Barcelona, probably cancel Barcelona out straight away, having already taken Rashford, and now having to offload players before they can afford a bloke who's on a free transfer, virtually, or at least getting them on loan and then having to pay next year. So it only leaves Madrid, and Madrid have got their centre forwards boxed off. So I think he's running out of space. I think he's running out of time, and I think he's probably been badly advised. I don't think he needs to come back with his tail between his legs. I think that's why Eddie has said he's injured, because I think at the end of the day, Eddie wants to keep him. And I think, if anything, that'll be the message Eddie will be sending to Yasser Al-Rumayyan.
Okay, interesting stuff from you, lads. I'd like to have a say now, George. From my perspective, it's been a mess since last weekend when Celtics, when we got beat off Celtic, and Eddie Howe came out and said what he had to say. That was the beginning. That was the first domino to drop. That was the first domino, which then set off the domino collapsing all the way through the week. So, first of all, communication is something that the lads keep mentioning time and time again. Lee Marshall is in charge as I understand, still of communication. So Lee Marshall, first of all, is responsible for briefing Eddie Howe on what he has to say about the situation that's developing at the club. Eddie will obviously be aware of what's happening with Isak, but he will be able to give him some guidance and some help as to what to say. He's been in the job long enough. Lee Marshall will also deal with the players, and he will also give advice to the players. So fast forward to today and seeing the lads in Singapore having to deal with questions about the Isak event. Bruno and Dan Burn thrust into the media spotlight, both old pros at it has to be said. Didn't really say a great deal. Said what you would expect a player to say, put under that kind of spotlight. So they followed the briefing quite clearly. With regards to the announcement that came out this week, and where that came from, whose mouth it came from, that Alexander Isak would like to explore his options. It's a strange one. It's a strange thing to say. It's not putting in a transfer request, which unfortunately some of our fans deemed it to mean, which confused a lot of people. But exploring his options means that he's certainly not going to sit down with Newcastle at this moment in time and sign a new contract. Maybe there's not one on the table. But it also means that clearly there has been some kind of interest in some way, shape or form, although not a formal bid, from other parties. Or it means that, the fact that there's been so much media speculation about potential clubs wanting him and would like him, that potentially he's testing the water, he's dipping his toe in the water. So there's a long way to go with this, sadly, for all of us. It means that we're still going to have this going on unless somebody turns up and says, we've got £150 million plus and we're willing to pay you for Alexander Isak for it. So that's the first thing I really wanted to say. The second thing is this summer is very much like the last summer that we lost our sporting director, Dan Ashworth. Dan Ashworth, of course, was a completely different affair. He was put on gardening leave. So that drew the whole process out. It was very public. There was a lot of suspicion over what he was doing when he left the club. Was he revealing Newcastle's budget and grand plans? Is that why Newcastle had a bad transfer window? Of course, we were all talking about the financial restrictions that Newcastle face. And then, of course, anybody who Newcastle bid for, we're talking about Newcastle tax. So, of course, that comes into play. Fast forward to this summer, and Mitchell's gone. Now, hypothetically, and I've put this out there as a hypothetical situation, a lot of people suggesting that maybe there was some kind of offer for Isak, which Mitchell maybe had mentioned, and then it hasn't been forthcoming, and that may be what has upset the apple cart. Now, that's simply a rumor that's been circulated. Nobody knows that for certain. But if that is the case, let's say hypothetically that was the case, then that could be a reason for Mitchell departing amicably. I said this yesterday on the podcast. So, then what's Mitchell's reaction going to be? Has he got a bee in his bonnet? I'm sure he still has contact with all the other clubs. Hypothetically, he could go out there and talk about what our potential business is going to be, which is completely torpedoed our summer. Again, it's all hypothetical. It's not something which I'm saying is fact. I'm not saying it's something I've heard. It's a hypothetical scenario, but that really could be the situation that they could have developed this summer, and it's beyond our control. What is within our control, though, for me, is appointing a new sporting director and a new CEO. Now, what I said to the lads was, we've talked about it on here. Why haven't they appointed anybody? Why haven't they put anybody in? Why haven't they brought anybody in? Well, I suggested something to the lads today. I said, are they holding back on this because they knew the situation that was going to develop with Isak? Because let's face it, who the hell wants to come in as a CEO or a sporting director and be the person who has to deal? The first thing they have to deal with isn't looking after incomings, but is to deal with Alexander Isak leaving Newcastle United. Some may say a strong-minded CEO or sporting director could come in and sell themselves to them and get it sorted out. But the words there that No Brush guys put, it's a circus. It is a circus at the moment. And a lot of it does come down to not communication, it comes down to miscommunication as well. And we really have to accept that, this is where we are at this moment in time. We've got a long way to go until the end of the transfer window. We've got 3 weeks to go till the start of the football season. So time is of the essence for Newcastle to get the house in order. The Wissa situation doesn't look as if it's going to get any better at the moment. Wissa quite clearly more than, they want more than we offered. But at this moment in time, they've come out now and said we don't want to sell him because we've already lost 2 of our star turns up front. It's becoming increasingly likely that could be another dead end for Newcastle in this transfer window. I hope I'm wrong. But again, that could be something else that goes against us in the course of the next couple of days or weeks. But I will point back to history. I do want to go back to history. I want to look back at anyone who is, let's say, over 55, right? Let's say over 55, over 60. We've talked about it on here many, many times. Super Mac, number 9, sold. Fans Foreman, Gordon Lee, never forgiven. Andy Cole, sold under Kevin Keegan. The infamous Steps interview where he came out. And, we never forgave Andy Cole. Some people still hold a grudge against him. But a lot of people very, very angry about Andy Cole going. But we did eventually find somebody to fill that elusive number 9 shirt. Les Ferdinand, and then, of course, the great Alan Shearer. Andy Carroll in more recent times. And don't think for 1 minute I'm comparing him to Andy Cole and Super Mac. But it was a similar scenario in that time. Andy broken into the team. He had a really good season. And it was at a key moment under Alan Pardew where he was sold on transfer deadline day. The kid didn't want to go, but it worked out. On the flip side, that actually worked out to be a good deal for us. 39 million for somebody who didn't play that many games. But at the time, we were all upset and angry. But what happened after that? Newcastle United didn't collapse. It didn't finish. It wasn't the end of the club. And like Alan Shearer has said, the last couple of interviews I've seen him do, nobody is bigger than the club. So if Alexander Isak does want to go, Newcastle should, speak to him and say to him, this is the deal. This is where we're at. See what the situation is and try and find out, let's try and find out what the market is and let's get it done quickly, because we can't afford to go into the season with two things. Can't afford to go into the season with a centre forward who isn't happy, a player that isn't happy, and an unsettled dressing room because of that. And we can't go into a season, if we sell Alexander Isak and it happens late, without centre forwards. We know what happens then. You don't score goals, you don't win games, and it's going to be an absolute nightmare that if Newcastle end up in a position where they're going into the season with the likes of Gordon, Alanga and Asula, makeshift strikers, it will be an absolute nightmare. So it's not great at the moment. It is disappointing. The PIF situation is very confusing, I think, for many of us. We really feel as if, on this show that, trust the process has been the right thing to say. I don't think PIF are getting bored, but they certainly have been hampered with the Premier League and the corrupt cartel. But we're in this position now where, we do need leadership. And I think the lads have all said that. We need some leadership from PIF. We need Yasser to come out maybe and say something. Maybe come out and explain the situation. Not leave it to invisible people at the football club who are all pointing at the person on the left and pointing at the person on the right and saying, well, that's not my job. That's his job. He needs to sit, because otherwise we're just going to end up with a summer of discontent, which is already kicked into first gear, moving through the gears. We've also got another situation developing where Eddie Howe will be getting sick. He's the man in the firing line. He's the one who's going to get asked the questions. Is he going to get sick of this? It's not beyond repair. It's not beyond repair. At the minute, we're on a very steep incline with a puncture on the front tire, and we need to get it fixed. But it's not going well at all, and I don't see how anybody can be upbeat and how anyone really can be happy about the situation. But you've heard what we've got to say. Everyone's having their chat as well. We're only doing an hour and a half tonight. We're going to have a quick ad break so everybody can have a quick breather. We'll be back after this.
A big thanks to all our sponsors, Skips and Bins. You can find them at their website, skipsandbins.com. Contact them at www.skipsandbins.com/contact. Say hello to low-cost waste disposal with pay-as-you-go and contract waste management. A big thanks to Mr. Vicky's Sauces, handmade in Cumbria. You can find them at their website, mrvickys.co.uk, email info@mrvickys.co.uk, or telephone 01768 210 102. Thanks to our fanzine sponsor, United Group Travel. There are no strangers on our tours, just friends you haven't met yet. 2-crew driver and courier, local family company, 3-star plus quality hotels and no interchanges. Hot and cold snacks and drinks available on the coach. All excursions included. Their website, unitedgrouptravel.com. Email beverly.ugtl@gmail.com. Telephone 01670 632 460 or 0791 666 4174. Just £30 per person deposit. Thanks to Media Arts for all the help with the technical side of things. And if you like listening to us as a podcast, you can go to Sports Social Podcast Network or to iTunes, Spotify, or other podcast providers. If you want to support the show, then hit the subscribe button. It's free. We do 7 shows a week. Hit the little thumb up under the video, which is the like button, or click share to share to your social media. You can also join the channel on YouTube by hitting the join button for as little as $1.99 a month. If you want to become an NUFC Matters member, you can go to nufcmatterspodcast.co.uk. It's a £25 one-off fee. You get your pen, you get your badge, a key ring, you get your beer mat and your fridge magnet and your membership card, nufcmatterspodcast.co.uk for that. And we have an event early next year, 13th of February 2026, an evening with Beardsley, Waddle and Gascoigne takes place at the Tyne Theatre and Opera House. To buy your tickets for that event, go to the box office 0191 243 1171 or Tyne Theatre and Opera House.uk.
And don't forget, the fanzine for next season is on sale now. 4 issues for £25. That includes your postage. Get yourself to nufcmatters.co.uk to subscribe today. And we will be seeing you all tonight at the League Cup final screening. And looking forward to seeing those of you who pop along there tonight. Okay, George, you wanted to make a point before my ramble.
Oh, just that clearly my opening comments upset 1 or 2 people. In fact, somebody actually said I've been saying strange things for a while. Well, get used to it. If Newcastle go on performing like this, then I'll be saying a lot more strange things. What I find amazing is those very same people, when we start losing games because we can't score goals, it'll be saying even stranger things and accusing everybody of everything. So I don't make any apologies for what I said. It's not a good day for Newcastle United. And what's worse, as Neil said, Steve said, it was predictable. It was predictable. And if they keep performing like that, then expect some more strange things from me.
Thank you to Rob for the donation to the Malverno Fund. He's having a night out tonight, so it is good to hear you are doing well, Rob. Look forward to seeing you when you get in. Stephen Kennedy posted a long post earlier on. He said, lads, if Isak goes, surely the only winners are his agent and Big Six cronies who along with Masters, will be rubbing their hands in glee on yet another win over the Geordie upstarts. Should we not be doing a deal for 150 million plus from a Saudi side with some sort of clause for Isak to leave Saudi the following year should someone cough up the same door so that the Saudis are not out of pocket? It's a chance for some sort of help in the short term and stick 2 fingers up with the above. said Big Six, only at Newcastle. Every day is an adventure. And final thoughts, if it's true he does want to go, then there's no good keeping him, but surely selling him into a Premier League rival is no good. If we do that, we're buggered, he says. Stephen, thank you for that. And he also says, I'm somewhere in the middle, neither a bedwetter or a happy clapper. But why did the club waste last summer on Gahey, assuming the bids were genuine? And why not do a deal for Trafford and Ekitike last summer? That's from Stephen House. We'll come back to that one. But yeah, just, the Saudi thing interests me, George, because, Newcastle, of course, owned by PIF. Do you think that could be a scenario that we see that maybe we are, we may see an Al Hilal come in and, try and break the bank and give him some decent, give him a decent money. I mean, it wouldn't feel as bad if he moved to a club abroad.
Well, it won't, but it still wouldn't. It would still leave a nasty taste in your mouth. And the best thing about it was it would show PIF showing their teeth a little bit, because that's one of the frustrations I have, is that they're playing by the rules, and I understand why they'd want to do that. But at the moment, it's allowing the very people who stymied our whole football club since the takeover are still getting the benefits of it. So if they can do something like that, that would throw that back in their faces a little bit, I'd be absolutely delighted. Whether Isak would buy something like that's another matter. But frankly, as I said, if he has instigated what has happened this last week, and I can't see how he doesn't know about what's happened at the time it's happened, then goodbye for me. It's as simple as that. Do you want that in the dressing room? I certainly wouldn't. It would be nice to see PIF trying to do something to show that they have weight, show that the power that they've used elsewhere in other sports and so on, to the benefit of Newcastle United. They're number one, says our chairman. We are their number one, and he wants us our number one. Well, Mr. Chairman, you've now got a chance to show what you think, how you think we're going to be number one, and maybe this is the turning point.
Could Saudi help bump up the deal, do you think, here, Mitch? Or do you think maybe it's a little plan maybe by, Yasser and co? Do you think they could get them to bump the price up, and it either puts other people off or it gets us a higher price?
The problem with dealing with Saudi clubs, if they're the ones owned by PIF, is twofold. One, the Premier League would want to get involved and start talking about fair market values. And we know how that works. And the second is, from a UEFA perspective, they've pretty much made it clear that any transaction like that will be classed in their eyes as zero. That said, failing UEFA's sustainability test is not really a big issue, because the biggest fine seems to be around about £8 million. So fuck that. Let's treat that with the contempt that it is. So that's the challenge there. If it was one of the clubs that wasn't owned by PIF, it's a different conversation altogether. And you could say we've got a fair market value, because it's been quite openly spoken in the press that this Liverpool value them at 120 million. So that's not a difficult argument, but it would start to open a can of worms that PIF seem to have not wanted to go anywhere near during their entire ownership. And one I wish they would, to push people and say, come on then, let's see what the colour of your metal is here, because we wish to do this deal, and this is how we wish to structure this deal. And so far, from what I understand, we have had a couple of deals altered by the Premier League, but rather than fighting back, they've just gone, yeah, okay, and then done no more deals. I'm sorry, there's got to come a time where we have to challenge that. We've got to go at that for me. it's something again that I've been reasonably consistent, I think, in saying for quite a while. But that's the complication. With the minute anything Saudi gets involved, we'll have Stefan Borson chucking in his Man City slanted opinion on something somewhere. He's loving this at the minute because it keeps everything off of Man City, keeps them out of the focus at the moment. So again, you've got to remember where your bad faith actors are and your paid actors are. But I think it's a situation that we're now left with, and as I said before, just feels horribly self-inflicted and utterly unnecessary.
Steve, a lot of people saying, what would you charge for Isak? What's the fair price on him?
Fair price is what we want. That's the fair price. It's what we demand. He's got 3 years left on his contract. Simple as that. So we're in the box seat when it comes to how much we're going to sell him. If the lad wants to go, that's fine. That's his decision. But it's our decision on how much it'll cost, how much the fee is. So we'll let him play with that game. We can ask for as much as we like. We can throw. Nobody's going to turn around and say, "Oh, that's too high." Premier League are going to step in and say, "No, you're asking too much. You've got to sell him to Liverpool for 120. You can't ask for 200. That's rubbish." APT 1. I'll say that first of all. Man City blew it out the water. APT 2 is coming along the line. If Newcastle did sell him to a Saudi football club, and it was somebody that was linked to PIF, you know what? This could be the straw that broke the proverbial camel's back, because if Newcastle United suddenly get hit by the Premier League stepping in and going, hang on, that's an associated party transaction, for me, it's wham, straight into court. And what follows immediately with Nick DeMarco and Keith Patterson and the rest of the legal team is stepping behind them and going, you know what? Not only that, but it's anti-competitive. You are now stopping our football club. We've proved with everything that's gone on in the past, and they could throw the whole lot. What it needs, however, it needs Al Rumayyan, and it needs the PIF and the football club to step up to the plate and put it in to back whatever legal case there is. I know that the club themselves cannot take the Premier League to court. That's against, but a fan-led action propped up with money that is given to a fan group could take that on. But what the Premier League got to be careful of is if they suddenly try and step in and talk about APT1 or associate party transactions, forgetting about APT1 and forgetting about City that is sitting there with APT2. And that case is pending. Those results are pending. It's been heard, and we're just waiting for them to come back. This could be the one. This could be the breaking point, especially with City's 115 cases hanging, which are now people talking about coming out in October. Nobody knows when it's going to come out. It's going to drag into another season the way things are going, because obviously it's got a problem. But this is the Premier League trying to concoct rules and trying to put obstacles in the paths of the likes of Newcastle United or an Aston Villa. But what it's shown all the way along is how unfair it is, because what it's allowed to do with Chelsea, where Liverpool are, where Man City are, where Manchester United are to a certain extent, because of the fact that despite the massive debt that they're sitting on, just like Tottenham, they have another football club or the club being run in another business name that allows them to avoid APT problems and to avoid PSR problems, etc., etc. So for me, it's a sticky wicket for them. To use another analogy, and this is something that really needs to be looked at and needs to be seriously considered. It really is. Because we've talked about it, and we've heard various people talk about the gap without seriously understanding the gap. And what we've witnessed this close season is what the gap really is. It's massive in terms of the way that it's structured and the way it's held us back. And it needs to be challenged. And the quicker you challenge it, the longer and better chance you have of Alexander Isak staying here, not only for 3 years, but maybe it's another 3 years after that if we extended his contract, if we're allowed to. Because if the money's there, the player will stay. Simple as that.
I mean, Steve, just to put some numbers on that, if Liverpool were to buy Isak, and I was listening to some football finance and analysts from Liverpool saying that would take Liverpool's spending this year over £400 million. We're never going to get to there.
No. We don't even turn that over.
No, absolutely. Well, that's one of the reasons, of course.
Yeah, I mean, there's huge amounts from other clubs this year. I mean, you know, it's ridiculous. I think there you go. I've got that graph there just before you chip in there, Mitch. Transfer spending in summer 2025. Liverpool, nearly 300 million. Chelsea, 218 million. Man United, 140.5 million. Arsenal, 136 million. Man City, 128.8 million. Spurs, 110 million. Sunderland, 107 million. Brighton, 67 million. Leeds, 59 million. Newcastle, that one sole transfer in Anthony Elanga, 55 million. Palace at the bottom of the table, along with Forest on 3 and 10. Mitch. Yeah, Mitch, you were going to say something?
Yeah, well, what I was going to say is to address something that's coming across again. Again, something I've touched on before, but it's worth touching on it again now because it's obviously in people's minds about have PIF lost interest, and I can understand why some people might feel that. It's fueled, unfortunately, by individuals who have a similar opinion in different ways to get that opinion across, and that's not fair because at the end of the day, we're listed in PIF's assets as one of the best performing assets, and they're very proud of that. However, I do think how they respond in the next week would go a significant way to winning back people's faith that they haven't lost interest. Because I can understand why they feel that. I remain totally of the opinion I have every faith in PIF. I have very little faith in people like Newcastle City Council, who they have to deal with to make certain things happen. That's a different thing altogether. But the actions that they take now, given that the chief executive above Eddie Howe seems to be ineffective and has let him down, and that nobody's taken hold of our star striker over the last season and calmed him down off the ledge, if this is the way he's been feeling since he was promised a new contract talks by Amanda at some stage, and when she left, that all disappeared with her. That all needs addressed, and it needs to be. We need to have people in position so this can never happen again. We are a shambles. We are a circus. We are an absolute embarrassment.
Yeah. And
there's no Saudi institution would like to hear those words associated with something they own. Quite right. It does feel like sometimes all we hear from the club is when they've got something else to sell with. And other things that are happening at the minute, I gather stadium tours are about to go up two or three quid ahead.
Just for the summer holidays.
That's reading the room well, just in time for the summer holidays, isn't it? Yeah. You know, all of these things, you know, the furore over the barracks being sold to a business club for the season before the tickets were even released. And that means people looking for hospitality for next season are paying double what they were paying just to get in to see the game compared to last season. It's a absolute crying shame that all of these things could be done and would probably, to an extent, fly more under the radar if everything was going well off the pitch. We were making signings. It would be a feeling like, oh, well, you know, we've got to fund this somehow, and would take a lot of it on the chin. But right now, while we've got a social media team who've come up with a new set of clever idea how to express things during the game, only to have it taken the piss out of me by bloody another football club, a cricket club, and bloody Specsavers. Well done, everyone. You know, it's the classic. If we fell in a barrel of tits, would come out sucking my thumb. It's just an absolute shambles, and I'm quite sure that the pride element must be kicking in. I hope the hell it is somewhere. The message is getting across to the chairman, to the people in the corridors of power, that decisions need to be made, and they need to be made right now, because you've not just got players to win back over, you've got some fans to win back over as well, and that's terrible. On the back of your best season in living lifetime.
Absolutely.
And it just, again, I come back to it, it feels so bloody self-inflicted and a terrible shame. And that's my frustration.
Yeah, and I can hear it. Sorry for saying this, but only see the directors when they have something positive or want to take the accolades, says Jimmy. 2000.
I got criticised for saying that about somebody once, and there you go.
Yeah. But people can see it. People can see it. Jamie Rubin is missing in action, that's for certain. And has he been told not to say anything, or has he decided that he's busy doing other things? It's very strange that he was once so verbal, but then suddenly isn't. What's going on with you, Jamie? Will be interesting to hear from you in due course. 2,123 people watching live tonight on NUFC Matters. Amazing figures. We never take it for granted. 880 of you watching on YouTube. That means there's a lot of you watching on Twitter. Please jump over from Twitter, search NUFC Matters, and hit the subscribe button. And thank you to Gary Dunn, who has dropped us an email again tonight. And as I say, if you want to drop us an email, you can drop us an email at nufcmatters1892@gmail.com. Gary says, hi, Steve. I thought I would give you my take on the shambles that is Newcastle United at the moment and whether or not PIF have lost interest. Firstly, I don't think PIF have lost interest. However, the decisions that have been made for appointments of the people who should be running the club are woeful. Peter Silverstone has been brought in to get good sponsorship deals into the club. It seems he picked the low-hanging fruit, then realised he had no ladders, so packed in. People say he's not good enough. Staff, he's not got enough staff, so it's harder. Simple answer: talk to the owners and tell them you need more staff. Director of football, surely I don't need to speak about them. You lose two that do very little. We've got an issue. Darren Eales, for me, is out of his depth. I mean, for me, I will question this, Gary, because we do know Darren is very ill, or has been very ill, continuing to get treatment, and ultimately had stepped down in June. That's what we were told. But you did say that he blamed Mandy for not being able to do his job, promised a transformative transfer window, and we had no signings. This keeps repeating until this year. So I guess, I can certainly see you're right on that score. And Darren did come out and tell us where we were going to be financially with the financial implications, Gary. The club's got no direction, leadership, and no communication with their customers. There are basic needs for the job and business. PIF also have to take some responsibility. They've employed these people, and I understand Yasser when he said, I trust these people, or I might as well do the job myself, but surely you've got to keep an eye on what is happening. The biggest failing of all, which would have stopped all this unrest, is why the club have not fought the unlawful PSR rules. We know there are ways around it. The club only need to financially back it. Nick DeMarco has said so, yet not one director or PIF employee has done a thing to protect their investment. This is why certain players, as revealed by other podcasts, have asked what has happened to the 5-year vision you sold me so that I signed. No new training centre, which they obviously want. They need a new ground for more income. Despite all the directors recruited for that purpose, we've seen none of this. The people running the club don't have the same passion as Amanda and have taken their eye off the prize. And if PIF want to be number one, sort out PSR and show the cartel that we won't be pushed around. Cheers, Gary Dunn. Thank you, Gary, for that. Lots of emotion, lots of good points coming in from everybody. It does surprise me, and I'll go to you, George, again. It does surprise me that the Rubens haven't, that Jamie hasn't come out and been a bit more vocal.
Well, not just Jamie, but not too long ago when they were vocal, they were actually getting into things like bloody Facebook and X and all, and actually criticising people for what they were saying and actually having to take back, which was interaction, which I thought was fantastic. And for it to disappear completely is just difficult to understand. You lads, say long before I could say it, is that we're the club's critical friend. We're not here to knock. In fact, I sometimes get criticised for being over optimistic about Newcastle United because I only want one thing when Newcastle United, I keep saying, the greedy little duck wants to win everything. Well, I want to win this as well, but anybody that's done anything, any sort of management at all of a business or any major project stuff, could look at what's happened to us this year and they would cry. It's just so abysmal from top to bottom. And then add to that is the void of nobody even attempting to explain why we're where we are. And as Neil and Steve often say, when there's a void, we fill it full of angst and rubbish, and we listen to all the trite that people like Simon Jordan and others say. And of course, they're loving it today. If you listen to Talk Sport today, it's just the best. The worst thing for me is that I've had to put up with exactly this for 70 or nearly 78 years. Okay. And the history is fascinating of Newcastle United. No other club in the country's got a history like ours. Everybody thinks that we're antipathy towards Aston Villa and vice versa goes back to the sobs on the Tyne posters. It doesn't. It goes all the way back to 1949 when our manager walked out of Newcastle United on a Friday and turned up at Aston Villa, managing Aston Villa on a Monday, and just left a letter on his desk to say he was gone. So that, all of these things have fun, but we've had all sorts of weird things. The weird things to my mind that happened to Bobby Robson, and you Steve ran through a lot of others. But at the end of the day, anybody looking at what's happened to this week that's had any sort of responsibility for some sort of management project can only be laughing up their sleeves. And the worst thing is the people laughing hardest are the very people we don't want to be laughing at us. We want them looking over their shoulder and seeing us coming up 100 miles an hour behind them. Well, this week that nosedived as far as I'm concerned.
Okay. Steve?
Steve, you mentioned it being a bit of a circus. I think it's been a bit of a three-ring circus, actually, the boardroom, the players and the owners, and the people who are suffering are the fans, perfectly honest. And we're the ones who expect to pay and go and watch that three-ring circus. I think you also mentioned the situation in the past, Steve, which I just wanted to pick up on. Supermac fell out with the manager and asked to leave, and it was inevitable that he was going to go. And at first, it seemed like all was sweetness and light. We did with Richard Dennis in 76 to 77. We got into the what became the UEFA Cup. But the wheels came off very, very quickly after that. The Andy Cole situation, again, Andy fell out with the manager. I don't think, from what we can gather, Alexander Isak's fell out with the manager. He's fell out with people above the manager. And the Andy Carroll situation was the only one who didn't want to leave and was forced out the door. And yeah, we never looked back after that, did we? Dear me, look at the doldrums that we went into after Andy left. Look at what it created on the terraces. Look at the angst it created for an awful long time towards the Ashley contingent after we'd put up with Keegan and trying to fight the whole situation with Keegan, and he just threw oil on the embers, didn't he? So sometimes situations like that with Newcastle United, whereas other clubs might move on, I think sometimes that nasty taste and that feeling takes an awful long time for it to clear. And I think we do tend to fester for a long time when these situations hit us. And I think it does tend to suffer on the field. I also wanted to mention about that little chart that came up about the spending in the summer transfer window. Liverpool, Chelsea, Man United, Arsenal, Man City, Spurs. Is that the top six? Is that the big six? Because they're all sitting there in top six. Man City's figures, that's bent a little bit because they did an awful lot of dealings in the January transfer window as well, to the tune of well over 150 million. Then you look at Man United. Where's that going to head? The only ones out of that really need to sell players. Liverpool's includes a record Premier League transfer. This is what we're up against, you know. Sorry to say, Sunderland sitting there at 107. Big gamble by Sunderland. But let's face it, anyone who had watched Sunderland last season knew that they had to go out and spend money because that team. So they're gambling on basically finishing 17th, aren't they? So they need to hang on by the skin of their teeth to stay in the Premier League, because if they went down after spending 107 million, you wonder where the club would be heading. I suspect that actually with Sunderland that it's a case of speculating. There's more probably going to come in if they do buy the lad from Sweden who used to be at Arsenal in Granit Xhaka. He'll not come cheap. So I think there's going to be an awful lot more movement there. I feel sorry for Crystal Palace. Have won the cup and they've only spent 3 million, but it looks like there's more. It's going the other way with Palace. They're going to be bringing money in first of all, and the only saving grace, I find it fascinating with Palace. The fans are up in arms and they all tripped over to Zurich the other day and protested outside the UEFA headquarters about them not being in the Europa Cup. You know what? They'd actually be better off in the conference next season, if I'm perfectly honest, because the squad that they've got and some of the players that they'll probably bring in would be good enough to win the Conference League that's next season. And what would that do? It would give them UEFA football, so they'd end up with 2 seasons in Europe minimum, if they were willing to just see. But we all know that there's an injustice there that the fans feel. So that this is what's fascinating about football, isn't it? You know, everybody's clambering around, everybody's to go for what they think is the best route to take, and etc. But I'll go back to one of the points that I made earlier. That middle group, that Newcastle United, that Aston Villa group that's sitting there just below, they're the ones that are really, really being penalised. They're the clubs whose owners want to speculate and have the money to speculate and have the money to push and challenge the Six, and the Six have shut the door on them. The Six have been very, very clever over the last 2 seasons and being able to produce their fighting funds, increase their revenues, but also do it in a way of also deflating Newcastle United and deflating the bubble of Aston Villa, despite Villa being in the Champions League last season and doing very well, and despite us being in the Champions League the season before and winning a cup this season or last season. It's still the financial aspect that's stopping the sporting aspect of our football club. And why should we be penalised in a sporting sense, be penalised financially when those other clubs have been able to build that pot of money and then suddenly shut the door on everyone else, and the Premier League to go, yep, quite happy. And you know what? Not only have you shut the door, but we'll pay for the boats. That's what they've done.
On the back of huge debt as well, Steve.
On the back of huge debt, yeah.
Some great updates from Newcastle United coming through there. Travelling and training, it's called, featuring a game of rock, paper, scissors. Thank you, Newcastle United.
Yes, I've seen some games of pool as well.
Ah, wonderful. Thanks for that. Wonderful update. We're running a meltdown, and at least there's a game of rock, paper, scissors, Neil.
Yeah, couldn't make it up, could you? You know, I understand the club has to, you know, truck on like it's business as usual, but it doesn't feel like they just can't read the room sometimes, you know, and it feels like an insult rather than a club that actually is able to get the feeling about what's going on within the fan base. And another, example of failed levels of so-called communication that have, been a running theme since certain people were put into certain positions. And that's led with the way we are now.
Are we being played as fools, Mitch? Are we being played as fools?
Look, you can't help, but every time there's something goes sideways, there's another kit release.
Yeah, you can't help thinking, you know what?
And it just feels crass.
Absolutely.
You can talk about PSR and income being a problem when there's a fan base we're pouring as much as we possibly can. I don't know how some families back home make some of the purchases they do, for what sacrifices some families must be making to get their kids the latest tops and make sure they've got this and got that, because I look at my personal spending in the last year on Newcastle United merchandise of one form or another and think, good God, can I really justify that? And that's me. And I'm in a very privileged position to be able to do it. But
Neil, if that had been Ashley doing that, they'd have put a gallows up in the Haymarket and wanted his head for it.
Yep. And I think
don't start talking about murders again, George. You'll upset them.
You know what it is, though, Mitch? The problem is, Mitch, as well. You're the best salesperson that Newcastle have ever had. Certainly in this past month. In fact, this last week. Because all you've had to do was send us a photograph of a pair of trainers, and before you knew it, Mitch and Stewie and myself had also got a pair. And I mean, and the weird thing is, I didn't realise this until our little group where we put the photographs of what had arrived, and we all take the same size feet as well. I was like, "What the hell?"
I know, it's bizarre.
Absolutely bizarre. But
I don't know how Swan Hunters.
Like Ted Lasso, this, isn't it?
How did Swan Hunters go out of business with the size of your feet?
It's like an episode of Ted Lasso, and if it went out on TV, it would probably those people who commissioned the program would go, no, this is so far fetched. We're not having this.
Yeah. Okay, we coming towards the end of the program. Obviously, we've got the do tonight, and there's only one way to finish a show like this, really. And it's if you're easily offended, it's probably best to leave the room and to depart into the kitchen. Well, we've got some signs. This one in a kitchen: the fat stripper must be cleaned out after every shift. Wow. And Jimmy, cooking with poo. I think I'll give that a miss, Jimmy, but thank you for sending that in. Staff required must be lazy and miserable to fit in with the existing staff. Apply in person with your CV. Have a wash before you come in. Thanks. And a new Indian restaurant. I'm always game for trying a new Indian restaurant. Vagina Tandoori. Wonderful.
Oh, dear me.
Be in and out of there, I think. Paul's second-hand furniture and old shite. That's a great way of getting somebody into your shop. And employee notice. We've noticed a distinct lack of work ethic lately. Somebody underneath replied to the management team with, and we've noted a lack of pay, recognition, and people who can manage, people who can actually manage, and that's signed by the staff
who actually manage. Great.
Yeah. We've had a few of these lookalikes come in each week. Metamorphosis ones. Lady Barbar.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah.
Very good one. And thank you to someone who's found another Star Wars one for us. Only a Star Wars fan would know this. Of course, it's the Millennium Falcon, isn't it? Very clever. And when you find out now, of course, the big news, the Pornhub now offers a 30-day free trial. And with a little bit of luck, we can make it through the night.
Oh, dear me.
Good Lord.
Brilliant. I do like them. And put your lady's panties in the microwave for 3 minutes, and if a biscuit pops up, then she's got a yeast infection. Follow me for more relationship advice, lads.
Oh, right. Jeez.
And I do like this. Your dad, 6 minutes into Boxing Day, trying on all of his new gear. Thomas Franks at Spurs.
Tommy in full tech.
And if you're thinking about getting a kitchen done, here's one not to get done. Kitchens by Fred West. And KFC's got OnlyFans, lads.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh.
One from Viz. After I ate 3 bowls of stewed prunes the other day, my elderly nan told me that I'd be shitting through the eye of a needle. However, she couldn't have been more wrong. If anything, my shitting was much less precise than usual. In fact, it went everywhere, says Chris from Chile.
Thanks, Chris.
And there's a new Lego out this week, lads. My first colonoscopy. I wouldn't put it past anybody at Lego to do that. Shall we try a different position, says the husband. Sure, why don't you stand by the ironing board while I sit on the sofa and fart, says the wife. And a young Alexander Isak wearing a Liverpool shirt seems he was a Red since birth, said Copwatch this week. And great name, Fire and Rescue Team, Fart. Thanks to Jimmy Moore for that one. And another reveal at a Coldplay concert.
Rooney.
And this one. Remember when you bury a body, cover it with endangered plants so it's illegal to dig it up? Follow me for more gardening tips, says this young lady.
Very good.
Maybe we should add George on there after he's been accused of tonight. And Takira Jana is with Jana Watson. Please ejaculate. This hurricane is serious. If you were in the area, hurry up and ejaculate, she said. Yeah, meow. Pornhub casting car spotted in Newcastle this week.
Oh, God.
And congratulations to Jeremy Beadle, who posthumously got his star on the Hollywood Boulevard.
Cruel.
And please do not throw cigarette butts in urinal. It makes them soggy and hard to light, says somebody. And the last one this week. Kyle, me at a certain point in a relationship, you get to a point where you've seen your partner's butthole more than you have themselves. And I think there's something beautiful in that. The priest. The bride's also chosen to write her own vows. Hope that's put a smile on your face at home. That is Tweet of the Week. If you've got any, send them to us. nufcmatters1892@gmail.com. Or if you're Jimmy, just inbox us on Facebook, lad. Short but sweet, back on Sunday, 5 o'clock with the professionals. There'll be a show, pre-recorded show for you tomorrow. Have a good weekend. Take care, everybody.
All the best.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Thank you.